show you how to make these Scrappy beetle bug wall hangings. They're great because they are completely made with scraps and filled with scraps. I would definitely say this is a beginner friendly tutorial. It's great for using up scraps, and it's also good for experimentation and creativity. And although I will be showing you how to make this little bug beetle thing, I reckon that with any template you can do the exact same thing. So hopefully your walls will be filled with bugs. Woo! So let's go ahead and crack on with this tutorial. For this tutorial you will need some paper and a pen. You will need one larger piece of scrap fabric, some embroidery thread, some wire to make the legs. It doesn't matter what colour because it's going to get covered up. You will of course need a bunch of scraps, some for the stuffing of the beetle and then some for the outer layer, so decorative things. And it's optional if you want to add some trimmings like lace, buttons and just things like that, just to make it a bit more funky. And if you don't know how to hand sew, then you can just get a hot glue gun and just do the whole process with hot glue. That is absolutely fine. But for me, I quite like the therapeuticness of doing it by hand. And you obviously need your basic sewing stuff like scissors, pins if you have them. It's not necessary, but it's good to have them, and a needle and thread. If you have some felt lying around, then that is also quite handy. It's going to be the underside of the beetle, and it just sort of neatens your, not your own belly, your bug's belly, but you can just use normal fabric and just turn the edges, but I'll show you how to do that when it comes to it. So the first thing we're going to do is create the template for your bug, and you can make any size. So I just went onto Pinterest and looked for different beetles because I obsess over beetles. So this is the one that I would like to make. So first thing you want to do is measure how high you want your bug to be. So I'm going to go about 22 centimeters. And then if I use this as reference, I know that there is a little head and this like middle bit of the body. So that's about like a third down. So I'm just going to do a little mark to help measure where I want things. And I think the head's pretty small, so we're going to go about here for the head. And then you measure how wide you want your bug. So I think 12-ish centimeters is a good width. Then I'm going to roughly draw this in. We've got two little antennas. I don't know if they are called antennas. And then we're just going to map out just one side of the legs, and that's going to help when we get the wire and we cut it to length. We can just again use this as a template. So we've got one leg down here. Got one right at the top here. And then one going up here. Fabulous. Just seeing, this is a lovely drawing. I actually thought this was a photograph of a bug, but it's not. It's like watercolour. So this is the artist, Lindsay Bracken. So yeah, just noticed that. Now have your thread nearby because this part gets a little messy. Grab your larger piece of scrap fabric. And then grab your scraps and place them in the middle. And it's up to you on how big you want your bug to be. But we're going to use the template underneath to help guide where we want the little bits and where we want to thread it. So wrap this up like a little cake or a present. You can start to like almost mold it to how big you want it. And here you can decide if you want to add more scraps or less scraps. And I'm quite chuffed with that. So then you grab your thread and then you just lightly wrap it around in a crazy way just to keep it all together. I'm going to just tie a knot to keep it a little bit more secure. There you go, you got something like this. And then you place it on top, and then we're going to start to wrap the thread around to create this shape. So as you can see here, we've got the upper body here, and we've got the little head here. So you can start to mold it and then thread around it. So we've got the body about here. So I'm just going to get my thread and wrap it tightly around that one area. There you go, you see? Now we're going to use the template to measure the wire for the legs and the antenna, of course. Because when you cut wire, it's quite sharp and prickly, so we're going to fold the wire and place it against the template, leaving about this much. That way it can be secured on the back or on the underbelly of the beetle / bug. So you want to do that for both antennas and the 6 legs. And it should look a little like this. The fun part is choosing what scraps you want to put on top of your beetle. I am going to go for a purpley pinky scheme, and then for trimmings I'm only going to add this little bit of lace. So we're going to put the legs to the side for now and work with the body. So first thing we're going to do is attach scraps to the head of the bug. So you want to grab your scrap and then place it on top of the head, almost like you're suffocating this bug, but yeah, you want it to come down past the little threaded bit that you've done, and then grab your thread and needle, and then we're gonna just put in a bunch of stitches just to keep this bit secure. You can actually stitch into the body that you've done as well. So this is going to be the upper body piece, and I just want it to be a little neater. Again, if you would like to have the raw edge around there, then you can, but I'm actually going to fold it in a little bit and then start with the back. Because this is going to be a decorative stitch, I'm going to grab my embroidery needle and one of the chosen embroidery threads. So I think purple will just be nice, just to sort of tie it all in together. I'm going to do actually a simple like running stitch. I think it will give like a really nice detail as well. And it's up to you. If you would prefer to get some pins to help pin it all in place, then you can do. It's good because then you know where to cut if you do that. Okay, so working on the body, and almost like what you did here, we're going to fold up into the line and then just do a very loose stitch with a normal thread and needle. But this time I'm going to make it a bit more interesting, and rather than have one large piece that goes around here, I'm going to have a few little strips and then just fold the tops and then stitch them down. Like mentioned before, if you would prefer to use hot glue, then you just have to be very careful not to burn your fingers doing this part. Or alternatively, if you quite like the frayed edge look, then you can just stick it on rather than folding and stitching. Okay, there you go. It's looking a little rough. So now I'm just going to sort of pull gently and wrap each piece around, and then on top I'm going to put other little bits of scraps and just hand stitch them on. And just because I like the sort of neat look, I'm going to turn the edges before stitching down. But again, if you like the frayed look, then you can literally just stick it on. So the way I'm going to do this is literally pull and then mould it around the body, putting a few pins in just to keep it secure. And if you find that it hasn't fully reached the back, then I just add another little piece just on top like that. So this is probably the real fun part. I'm going to use different coloured embroidery threads to stitch the scraps down, and I'm probably going to do some different stitches like running stitch, like cross stitch and things like that. So I'm going to do that. Make sure whatever fabrics that you put around the body, just sort of stitch them down. It doesn't have to be pretty because we're going to cover this with either the felt or the fabric. But yeah, it's just, it makes it a lot easier to stitch it all down. This is also the time to add your trimmings. And if you've got some bits where you've got some frayed edges that you don't want exposed, then just get some like lace or ribbon or anything, rickrack, whatever you want, and then just literally stitch it directly on top. Just remembered I had this really cool tiny little bit of ribbon, and I'm gonna actually stitch that on top of here. So this is how it's looking. It's looking weird. So we need to add the eyes next. And if you've got a long strip of black fabric, then you can do that. But I'm going to use black ribbon just because it's a lot easier. And then I'm going to cut about, what's that, like 10 centimeters? And I'm going to create 2 knots to make the eyes. So 1 knot, and then I want a second knot almost on top of it or around it. Just creates like a bigger surface area. Yeah, there you go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tuck those loose bits, I might clip them, I'm not too sure yet, and sort of create a little ball, and then I'm just going to hand stitch them to the side of my bug. Like that. Obviously it doesn't have to be black, you can do green eyes, red eyes, pink eyes, whatever you want to do, just as long as you have some matching thread, just so it doesn't look too out of place. Ta-da. Before we move on to making the legs, we're going to flip your bug around and then grab either the felt or some fabric, and then we're going to place this on top and mark where we want the back piece to go. So what I mean by that is we want this to be fairly clean because we need to attach the legs to it, and we need to attach the little hook, like thread hook, for it to go on the wall, if you want it as a wall hanging, of course. So I'm going to place that on top like this, and then just put a couple of pins in, and then basically I'm just going to map out where I want to cut. If you want, you can just flip it around and draw like a line like this. There you go. So the goal is to have it at the back to sort of neaten all of the edges, and then once it's stitched down you shouldn't be able to see any of it. So I think once that's stitched down, that should be okay. I'm going to stitch this down. I'm going to double thread it just to make it a bit more secure, and it's all been pinned in place, and then I'm just going to do a very basic stitch to keep it down. Basically you want to go into the side of the bug or beetle and then come through up on the felt or fabric. Ta-da! See, it's looking, I mean, not super neat, but it will do. Once it's on the wall, you won't even see it, so that's good. Then to do the legs and the antennas, or antennae? It could be antennae, couldn't it? I'm not too sure. Right, but they're super easy. So you just need some longer strips of your scraps. Even if they are super short, that's fine, because we're just going to wrap over them over and over and over again. So before starting, you need to decide what colours, I mean, if you want to do multiple colours, that's fine, but also what colour thread you want to use. So I'm going to start with the antennae, and I'm going to do it in this dark purple to match the head of this bug. And really easy, I'm just going to take one end and wrap it round. And I'm only going to do that about 2 or 3 times. It doesn't matter if it's really scraggly. And then we're going to cut that. And then as you can see, I've just gone over the wire, so I'm just going to fold and again sort of wrap it a little bit. And then with your thread, you are literally just going to take it and wrap it round a bunch of times just to keep all of that fabric secure. And it's up to you if you want to cover the entire thing with thread so you can't see the fabric underneath, that's fine. But I quite like the fabric peeking out, so I'm just going to do probably about that. And then I'm going to make a knot just to keep it a little bit more secure. Fabulous. I'm going to try and keep it symmetrical, so I'm going to do that antenna and then I'm going to work on the legs. For the legs, I'm actually going to do a mix of this really fluorescent like orange, pink, but also I've got some ribbon in there as well. So I'm just going to have a bit of fun, and what I'm going to try and do is for the legs, I mean, you can follow the template or it's completely up to you, but I'm going to wrap it more towards the base of the leg and then sort of thin it out and only put thread on the very tip, just because I think it looks more bug-like, but I'll show you what that looks like when I do it. Okay, now that you've got all of your legs and antennae, we are going to start attaching them to the body. So individually sort of mark it with the template, and then you're going to hand stitch onto the felt or backing. And if it's easier for you, you can just hot glue gun this, but I just prefer hand stitching. I would do maybe about 4 or 5 stitches just to make sure this is really secure. Before stitching, just bend them how you want them to be stitched on. So I've gone for like a really wriggly look here. Oh my goodness, right, the last thing we need to do is to add a little thread hook thing. So grab some embroidery thread and needle, and then you're going to tie one knot on one side, and then towards the top about here you're basically just going to go underneath and do 2 little loops like that, and then you just want to create a little knot here. And voila! There's your little Scrappy beetle. I really hope you like this tutorial. I do have some more tutorials on what to do with your scraps and things like that. So if you wouldn't mind, please like, comment and subscribe. It really does help. You have no idea. And if you can, please tag me in what you make. It fills me with joy. So please, 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 please tag me. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time. Bye.